So thanks everybody for joining us. My name's Carrie Gillum and I work here with Howard at Career Oyster. Excited to share with you some thoughts and insights tonight on the marketplace trends, as well as how to really overcome ageism and turn it upside down. So first of all, can you guys see my screen okay, my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And Howard, I'm not seeing everybody, so you just need to tell me if I need to stop or be interrupted here.
Okay.
So just a couple of housekeeping items. This is being recorded, and so we'll make sure that you get not only the recording, but also if you want the PDF of the slides, we're happy to get that to you. What we're going to cover tonight is just some of the current marketplace landscape trends, how to really go about your career strategy, how to target companies in your next role. We're going to talk about your resume strategy and what to include in your resume as somebody with the years of experience that you do have. We're going to talk about networking and how do you network to really sell your strengths and the value proposition that you offer. Same thing on the interview strategy, right? So how do you use that interview to your advantage, take control of it, and sell your strengths and your value proposition? And then what's next? We're going to be doing a masterclass on how to turn ageism upside down, or some other career consulting if that's helpful to everybody. So with that, and I think most everybody's familiar with Howard and Career Oyster, but really Career Oyster, we take a different approach to helping people find their dream jobs. So we throw a lot of the common myths upside down. We take a different approach to resumes using a forward-looking resume instead of a chronological history of the past. We also teach people how to take control of that interview, and how to really treat the interview like a sales call. So you'll hear more from Howard about that. And I know a lot of you guys are familiar with him anyways. So just any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or if you have any questions, feel free to just interrupt us here. And I do have the questions that you all submitted ahead of time, so we'll cover those as well. So one of the things that we looked at was what are some of the discrimination lawsuits that are out there, right? And the different reasons. And because we thought, well, maybe there's a lot of discrimination lawsuits out there for ageism. But what we found really is it's really what the fifth in the range of different reasons for lawsuits in the workplace. So things like retaliation, race and color, disabilities, and sex all have more lawsuits than ageism actually does. And some of the things that we have found is that the labor force participation trends for mature professionals have grown steadily. Individuals aged 55 and older continue to represent a larger portion of the workforce than they have in years past. By next year, it's expected that there will be a 5% increase in participation rates among older workers. This is driven partly due to longer life expectancies, but also evolving retirement plans. I think many of us are wanting to continue to work in some sort of capacity until later on in life. And then the other is that the impact of retirement age. So the average retirement age has increased to 64.6 years. Again, I think people are living longer and we want to continue to be healthy and active. And part of that is continuing to keep our place in the workforce. Some of the key industries, and Howard will get into more specifics, but some of the key industries that are great places to look for mature individuals. One is the healthcare sector. So the specific skills and experience and certifications that people have in the healthcare sector continue to be in demand. The second is professional services. So consulting, financial services are looking for mature professionals from a leadership perspective and experience and a maturity that the younger folks can't necessarily provide. And then the third is education and training opportunities. So the education sector is hiring mature professionals for both teaching as well as leadership and mentorship roles. So there are some really good industries, some sectors where you might find it's just the right place for you. Another graph that we were really excited to take a look at and really study a little bit here is what are the specific job market opportunities for mature professionals, right? What are jobs or older workers more likely to perform? And so if you see those little green circles on there, that's people ages 65 and older versus the empty circle is more the teenagers or entry-level professionals. So some of the specific roles that might be a great fit are anything in the management sector, sales and related sales functions, office and administrative support, and then education, training, and library, as well as transportation and material moving. So those are some of the specific roles where you might find that there's a great fit for you. And of course, we can't get through a presentation talking about workforce without the fact of remote, right? So the fact that we have such a remote workforce now has really opened up a lot more opportunities for people. You know, you're no longer bound by the geography of where you live, but by being able to do remote positions, it really just expands the opportunity for you. And then some of the high demand skills, I thought this was interesting also. Some of the high demand skills this year, one is project management expertise. So as organizations continue to try to get more efficient, make sure they're working the right projects, make sure that they're delivered on time and within budget, are creating a lot of opportunities for anybody in project management. Again, we've touched on this, but mentor and leadership. So the ability to provide that direction, provide that leadership to younger professionals is highly desirable and really in demand among a lot of organizations. And then the third is adaptability. So, right, we continue to see organizations change faster. The pace of change is faster than it's ever been. And so somebody with the maturity and the experience who can help lead an organization through those periods of change continues to be in high demand. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Howard, who's going to talk a little bit about some career strategies.
Okay, so I think a lot of people have experienced rejection and inability to get a certain kind of job or a certain job, and they've automatically perceived it as ageism. But if you think about it, you can be rejected for jobs for discrimination in a lot of reasons and a lot of ways. And just because you've been turned down doesn't mean it was really discrimination. It just means that you didn't do everything you could to win the job. I'm pretty confident that even at my final, I'm in the fourth quarter, I could go out and get a sales job because I have a lot of sales skills. And maybe I can't get it at a big company, but I can get it at a small company. So we're going to look at these perceptions and work on the ones that we can control. For example, there is a perceived perception that you will be higher salary expectations, right? But actually, most seniors that I've seen really are looking more for balance of life and other issues, and therefore they have a big advantage because they have a lot of experience and they're willing to compromise on salary. So you're getting a Mercedes-Benz for the price of a Ford. If you sell it properly, it becomes a big advantage. The second thing is they feel that there's a risk in hiring them because they'll have a shorter employment tenure. Well, actually, that could be just the opposite, because at this stage of life in your senior circuit, and I call the senior circuit between 55 and 70 plus, at that point in time, you're really looking more for a place to go and contribute, and you're really not into a career progression usually, unless you're, a certain percentage are into management executive. But most people trying to balance life, do something they like, give back, and therefore they're looking for a way to earn income, build up their retirement, and they're not interested in making job changes. So you're actually a lower risk than the young person who was still building their career and they want to change jobs. And if they don't move up fast enough, they leave, or they get an opportunity, they leave because they have a longer runway to work. And they're looking at different things such as return on investment of their career, or perhaps skill development or transitions. So the fact is you'll be more stable as long as the client knows that what your agenda is. We'll talk about that as a solution. Technical proficiency. Well, that's true. Continuous learning is going to be required, but nobody can keep up with every part of the technology. But if you're interested more in the systems analyst world, or the change management world, or the project management world, where you're talking about processes, you can stay current very easily. One of the reasons I left in the computer business long ago was I didn't want to keep up with the technology and the details of it. I wanted to be above the technology and into solving problems. And I solved recruiting issues and search issues and now coaching issues, but that's above the particular technology. If you do try to take another technology job, you would end up having these stress of learning new technologies, and it goes faster than you can keep up with. The next thing is the biggest issue a lot of people have is doubts about your adaptability and flexibility. Well, I guess there's a perception that older people, while we are a little slower on the draw, right? I'm out of storage, I understand that. And I'm a little slower on it. We also bring a lot more experience and real world practicality to the job. And we bring a lot more ideas because we've seen much more. So there is wisdom as opposed to pure details. And adaptability and flexibility, I think you go back to two issues. One can be your past performance of solving problems and expertise. And the second can be a track record of successes that you still carry with you. Successful people continue to be successful. And top 10% people continue to be top 10%. Now, get to a job where that expertise shows up and all of a sudden adaptability and flexibility become less important because you're bringing some of the expertise and it's easy for you to adapt to their culture or their processes, et cetera. Okay, so selecting the right opportunity becomes a key part of the overall strategy. Training costs, there's exactly the same point. You're likely, if you have the skills already in certain areas of background and you're going toward jobs where instead of being 50% qualified, you're 80% qualified, your transitions are easier, your contributions are better, and that makes you a better hire than even a young person who's got to have training curves and they need training too, and the learning curves, especially in real world issues. Resistance to change. Well, that's what old people have, right? Everybody says old people can't change. We've always done it this way. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. They have a million slogans out there. Well, that's not really true. I keep ahead of my kids. Not easy sometimes, but I keep ahead of them. And I every once in a while I have to just put them in their place that I'm not out to pasture yet. So the reality is you have to preempt any kind of resistance to change. You can use preemption, which is a technique, and you use stories to tell where you've made changes successfully and why you want to change now. The more they know what drives you to change or what drives you to take a job or drives you for the next 4 or 5 years, the better off you will be. Finally, there's two concerns that are real apparent sometimes in gaps or in just the way you appear. And this you may not be able to control totally, but health concerns, if you've had a health concern, preempt it before if it's not asked, because it won't be asked. It'll probably illegal to ask about it. So they're sitting there worrying about why you were out for a period of time, what happened. We need to come up with our story and preempt it if they don't ask it. And there's nothing wrong with having a priority in life, having to do with health of you or a spouse or anyone else. Just be straightforward with it and present it in a positive way. Lack of energy. The way that is proven, the best way to handle that is to have a strong, proactive interview. The whole point of an interview is chemistry. Chemistry is created by having the right messages with the right delivery, with the right amount of energy and showing you're still out there ready to play ball. Okay. And down where I live, we have people 85 years old playing softball and hitting the ball and out in the field running around. They have energy. We need to show energy in our process. And part of the way to do that is to learn to interview with a very sales and proactive approach, have structured answers, and be able to guide the flow of the interview. Okay. So here we are in this product life cycle, and you can see all the different stages. And right now some of us are out at D, maturity of the market. Some of us are out at E, I may be out at F, and we didn't fit that one on there. I don't know where that one goes, but I'm definitely out in E. And what we look for, you have to decide, what do you want to do? Because when you're doing something that you like and you want to do, it becomes easy. It's a passion play. That's what I do for my coaching, and that's what I'll do till I visit the next world. Personal priorities are important. I want some balance in my life. I want other things to happen, but I also want to do work I love, because then it's not work. The second thing is I want to stay in my lane, because if I'm working on things that I'm qualified to do, where I have some expertise and I'm 80% of my strengths are there, becomes very easy to adapt and be and mentor and guide and help people, help the employees, etc. So you want to stay where you're somewhat qualified to do. In general job search, if you're younger than that, you can get by with 50% because you're in learning modes and you're at lower positions sometimes. But the idea is to stay in your lane. Then we figure out, okay, who's going to hire me to do this kind of work? What are the targeting companies that would hire me for this kind of work? Because to sit there and make a transition to a whole new industry and a whole new set of parameters, it's going to be more stressful than it's worth. And finally, come up with a reasonable salary that gives you flexibility, and figure out what is the minimum pay that you need for your next 4 or 5 years, and be flexible with it. You know, you don't, just because salaries go up at certain points of your life doesn't mean they always go up. Just like I used to say, farmers, some years they have good crops, but they also plan because some years they don't have good crops. Well, different points of life, you have to step back, take a sideways step, or regroup to get something you like and something you can spend your days on. All right. So when we do goals coach, and an exercise we do, we target certain companies and roles. And the idea is to figure out, what is the title or roles that I want? Am I demoting my titles to get to a job that's easier, that I can handle and be more in balance, and it's okay with me to be an individual contributor versus a manager? Is it that I'm changing my roles from sales to a service oriented, or to mentoring or some other training type program, etc.? Figure out what your personal priorities are on location and travel. And that remote job really creates a lot of opportunities, because, you know, there are companies in every city, especially cities that there's two kinds of opportunities. One is the high-tech cities and places, if you're in that game, where you can work for Boston companies or California companies very easy in the Southeast. And you can be a remote worker in certain kinds of jobs. The other side of it is you can go to companies that are in the Midwest, where they can't find people, where they have fewer candidates, and be their remote person and work for them in Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa. You know, I just drove through them. There's a lot of farming fields there, but they may not be able to get people they need for the companies they need. The next step you want to decide is, what industry do you have domain knowledge of? Do you understand certain industries, how they work, how they make money, how they provide products and services, something about how they compete? Very important, because companies want to hire a person that knows their industry. They also want to hire people that know their products and services. If you know the products and services of a given company, then you have that domain knowledge, because that's what that means. You know a lot about them, how they work, how they make money, and how to compete with them. So by identifying this domain package for your targets, you got an industry, products, services, and expertise that you can combine to make transferable skills that you can get into another company in that industry or close to it, or you can leave industry out and you can go with products and services, or some cases you can lean on technology but stay above the details. These are things that you want to identify so that you can target better for your future market. And this is the key for seniors, because you're not going to target the same opportunities you targeted when you were starting out, nor when you were at your zenith of your career. Those companies may have matured too much, and it's not a place for you. We got some more there. Yeah. Company size. I can't tell you how many times I go to a job search meeting, and I used to do this in Atlanta, and everybody in there, a bunch of seniors and upper, a lot, mature individuals, they would all be talking about the same 6 companies in Atlanta: Home Depot, Coca-Cola. None of these companies were going to hire them. And yet they all said, who do you know at these places, back and forth? And yet there's 10,000 other companies that I was working with as a recruiter, and they were mid-sized and smaller companies that would love to have senior people. I have hired personally many senior recruiters, and I brought them in. They were willing to take pay cuts to fit my limited budgets, but they wanted a place to go and do their operation, and I hired them, and they became successful, and they stayed with me for several years. They were very loyal. So look for companies that are smaller or mid-sized. I just talked to a guy today who's one of my real innovative recruiting masters. And he told me he doesn't take companies that have more than 27 people because he can get in easy. And I think he's 59, and he's claiming about some age discrimination already. I said, you're kidding me. You're not, shouldn't be facing that. Your expertise is so strong. But his strategy is correct, to get into smaller companies and help them grow and move up. And that's what he looks for. So the real key is to target better here and to get jobs for careers. Now, the other idea is sometimes seasonal jobs, cash jobs, or just downsize your career and take a job in a small company where you can be an office manager, an operations manager, someone that's involved with customer support. Those skills are transferable in a lot of cases. Will the big companies hire you there? Probably not. But a small company will absolutely love you. Here's some job boards. I'm not going to go through them, but these job boards are interesting because one of the exercises in Goals Coach is to figure out our target market, right? Well, here's a case where these jobs are saying, we're looking for seniors. So if you went to these jobs, instead of going to Indeed and LinkedIn, where 3,000 people apply to a given job, go here. And now all of a sudden your application and whatever will be a lot more received a lot better. Plus, you have a way of contacting people and figuring out who's in charge and making some presentations using some exploratory meetings. So these are some job boards. Okay, so we talked a little bit about our perceptions. We talked a little bit about how we can actually reverse them, flip them on their head by telling them about our strengths. We talked about the fact that we have to prepare differently. We have to prepare for these particular perceptions, and we need to target to the right companies. So once we target to the right companies, then we say, okay, now we're ready to write a resume. Or if you're in your own business or something, to write a little bit of a marketing document or a proposal, et cetera, so that we can approach these companies. And a forward-looking resume is the opposite of what they teach everywhere else in the marketplace. And it makes no sense from a position, because traditional resumes are reverse chronological histories, backward-looking documents that have been around forever. And yet everyone agrees that job search is a sales and marketing process. In every sales and marketing process I've ever worked on, hardware, software, technology, recruiting, coaching, consulting, you find out what a customer wants and you write a forward-looking proposal, a prospectus, a statement of work that goes to where we're going. So why would we write a traditional background that's only going to make us look old and be wrong? Instead, we should take, here's what I want to do with the next stage of my career, and here's the background and expertise that I have and my successes that make me qualified. Writing a forward-looking resume, and many of you who have worked with me know what they look like, and others we can certainly show you. But that's the key, to write a forward-looking document where it says specifically, this is what I want to do, just like a proposal. It's heavy use of keywords, like a proposal, heavy use of your your strengths and your resources and your ability to help them. Strong success stories with results, reference stories, stories like that in any other sales process. People want to know that you've been successful somewhere. Do you have to have done everything in the past? No, but you have to have the knowledge and the capability to do it and be able to show that in your proposal, which is your marketing document. And finally, we would want to enhance the proposal with now, if it's a situation where you don't have experience, all the experience, or you don't have, let's say, you want to make a transition out of where you are, or your industry or your product line left you, all those can happen, then you have to show that you have knowledge and capabilities. And it's interesting that you can also talk about your aspirations, which is, I think, is the next bullet, Carrie. There it is, aspirations. People don't realize this. They do 1/4 of their marketability in a resume. And the 1/4 is, these are things I've done. Whether you want to do them in the future or not, you present things you've done. And you present them chronologically so they rule you out in the last 5 years. And the reality is we are able to sell, and I've proven this selling in all kinds of fields where I've sold new solutions, innovation, new types of products and service. Why? Because I had the knowledge of what they're about and the benefits. I had the capabilities to produce and do those things where we had to modify software or change things. And I had the aspirations and the desire to sell those kinds of things, just like I have the desire to do this coaching. So you can sell those 3 things just as easily as you can sell expertise and your experience in your resume. So we need to create a forward-looking resume that answers that basic question: what do I want to do, and why am I qualified and should be considered? That's the key for senior people. You got tons of capabilities, and meanwhile you're talking about things that you don't want to do or that they're antiquated or whatever. Let's talk about the future and create a future opportunity for yourself. Okay, next one, interview strategy. Okay, so let's assume we get an interview, and in the case of a resume, now you have got to sell your strengths and your value proposition, which is out there. If you've done the homework with the resume and you know your marketability, your features and benefits from there, you understand your product and you understand the opportunity that you're going after. So now you have to educate, you have to out-interview other people. Well, if you just go in and play defense and let them start asking you questions and you're sitting back trying to play whack-a-mole and answer them, you're going to look like every other candidate and look like someone that maybe you get the answers right, maybe you don't, maybe you talk yourself out of a job, but it doesn't build chemistry and it doesn't differentiate you. So how do you do that? We use a structured interview. It's a sales approach based on a long time IBM approach way back when. And when you use that structured interview, all of a sudden they see you're easy to talk with, clearly communicating. You pick up your speed and cadence so that you talk with an energy. You have a strategy for that entire interview. You have answers and lists for your common questions, and you come up with preemptions and outweigh techniques and things to deal with some of the issues. You express a personal agenda because that is the elephant in the room. And so if you sit there and try to ignore, well, they're not asking me about my age, so I'm not going to say anything. That's the nonsense. You need to bring it up as a strength and bring in why you're talking to them, what you want to do with the next 5 years. I'm interested in being a team player. I'll be able to come up to speed quickly. I'll be able to help you, etc. And I'll be able to be a loyal employee in here. That's why I'm talking to you. And that personal agenda means a lot to their confidence. Learning structured delivery techniques and mastering that message and delivery is part of a program that you need to invest in a little bit, because in the end, interviewing will double or triple your odds. And if you get turned down in an interview or you're not getting through the screens, don't blame, be accountable. Don't blame the ageism issue. Look at yourself and say, what could I have said that would have allowed that person to be more confident at pushing me forward? And if you get to the management interviews, the same thing. Try to be accountable about your presentation, your delivery, your energy, and use good techniques. And that will make you excel over other people. Okay. We do have some techniques that we've come up with, and I don't think too many people teach these, but we do. And these are techniques to overcome the elephant, right? The elephant in the room. And the elephant, even with younger people, they might have a language issue. They might have a handicap issue. They might have a shyness issue. They might have other issues. You have to overcome the elephant in the room. It's there, not going away. And you don't want to do it at the end of the interview. You really want to do it somewhere in the middle of the interview at best, because you want the interview to end on a positive note. So I already mentioned one of them. You present a personal agenda, not in a long drawn out story, but in a series of lists that will say to them, these are reasons why I will be a stable, low risk hire. And this is where I can help and contribute with you. And here's my agenda for the next 5 to 10 years. That's what you should do for your personal agenda. And sometimes I even tell some people, depending on how your appearance is, some people might be 50 and they look a little older. Then you should tell them, hey, I am 50 years old. I'm in the prime of my life. And here's what I want to do for the next 10 years, which takes that issue away. Okay. There's always an exception, is a rule I always find, like even when I go to a parking lot, I have an uncanny amount of luck getting a front row spot because I'm the only one looking for it. I always say there's a spot up there somewhere and I go look for it. And it happens so often, it's ridiculous. But it's because you think differently. So if you sell yourself as an exception, sell yourself as here's what I want to do and why I'm looking specifically at you. This is why I have some advantages over other candidates. That can work. The preempt technique I talked about is where you bring up the agenda. You bring up your goals. You bring up why you're there, or your age. You even tell them your age. I'm 61 years old, and here's what I want to do for the next 5 years. I'm not looking to build a career. I'm not looking to climb the ladder. I'm willing to take a reasonable compensation. All I want is a place where I can be on a team, help you do certain functions. If I'm in sales, great. Do sales, run projects, etc. And I will do my job and be low maintenance. Managers like low maintenance people. Believe me, I got a lot of years of that. That's why I don't want to manage. So, did I finish all them, Carrie? I don't know if I got them, but all right.
I can go back if you want, yeah.
Let me just see if there's anything, one final comment. Project work, trial periods. Oh, okay. If you outweigh technique is a typical way to handle weaknesses, and that's pretty easy, where you talk about the things you're bringing to the table, the 80% factors. The other thing is, if you want to overcome something and you see there's some resistance, a lot of times by offering trials, project work, temp to perm kind of things, senior internship. I've seen people work for free for 2 weeks and see how it works out. And all of a sudden it works. I know you see young people do it, but it's just as easily as an older person to do that. The other thing you can do is fractional work. Some small companies would like your talents, but you know what? They don't like the fact they have to pay you 100 grand a year, 120, 130 grand a year, but they're willing to pay you 80 grand a year. And maybe you work 3 days a week with them and you work it that way, or you work a certain period of time. So you want to get creative to try to get yourself out there. Role reversal, I'll catch that a little later. That's where you kind of ask them, if you were me, and I was working for free, what would you do with me? And they give you some, and maybe they'll give you an answer, whatever, but it forces them to think in your terms of what they could possibly do with you. And then you give them the good news, bad news. The good news is that I can do all that for you. The bad news is I'm not quite free, but I'm reasonable. And then you can talk about some work that you could do and try to create. But that's a role reversal play. And sometimes it's humorous and sometimes it works. But I've thrown that out before. So it works. All right, hidden market. This is this is the part of the job, if you're not in sales, everybody's afraid to do. And yet this is the most lucrative way to get a job. My kids have created jobs. I've created jobs. I know I could go out and create a job. The reality is you learn to run an exploratory meeting. You target the companies that are in your list. And these companies don't have a posted opening. They have the products you like, the industry you know, etc. They might have the domain that you're aware of, right? Some domains are better than others. High-tech domains are a little more aggressive on the younger side. But healthcare and the domains that Carrie talked about, they are very open to senior workers. And they can be very rewarding to go in and transition your skills into those environments of healthcare or senior care or training programs or operations in a small company. All those things would be love to have reliable people. So what we do is we target those companies and we try to figure out the managers and the names, and then we run exploratory meetings, just like a consultant would, to go in and see what their goals are. What are their obstacles? What are their challenges? How could you help? Could I be a consultant? Could I do a 2-week, 3-week pilot, help you define your requirements? Could I come in and I'll do a project in this particular area or mentor someone on that? Could I come in and lay out a process for you, et cetera? And they would usually lead to follow-on business. That's how the big five gets big contracts. They don't ask the company whether they have any work in AI. They go out and talk to them about their business. And by the time they're done, they have a pilot. And then after that, they got a $6 million contract. They create it by going in and talking about business needs, priorities of the executives. What are they trying to accomplish and what are their incentives to get it done? That's what you want to understand. What are the personal agendas of those executives and where can you help them make sure they hit their goals and their numbers? That's what we're talking about approaching on an exploratory meeting. Most people don't do that. They do general, passive, informational type networking. Doesn't work. You need to make these meetings. They are sales calls. They are not interviews. They are sales calls. And you're going in, you have an agenda. There's a way to open it nicely with a little background. There's a way to control the flow. And then you have a strategy to create opportunities. And you know what? If it only works out 1 out of 15 times, that's great. You got a job. And the fact of the matter is sales is like that. It only works out sometimes 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15, depends. But guess what? When you're in those meetings, the only discussion there is what can I do with you, not how do you compete with everybody else? And that's why you do it. The statistics in the market say, and I think they're high, but they say 60 and 70% of the jobs come from networking type things. I will say it's at least 50%, and that's where you have a chance to win. So what do? You do a structured sales call. It's just like a structured interview, a little more discovery involved, etc. Now there's 2 kinds of calls. One, you could go directly to the managers, like the exploratory meetings, because they have the ability perhaps to create a job for you, to replace a person, to promote a person. They have some job that they haven't posted yet. They might be able to create a contract for it with you. All that's possible. But there's other people that you might go to indirect contact, someone in the company, to try to identify decision makers. That's one thing you can do. That's an indirect exploratory meeting. The second indirect meeting is where you have a posting, but if you apply, you're not too confident you'll get through the grind and you'll be in the black hole. What you do is you find an indirect contact, you try to talk to them a little bit and find out if they have a referral program. And if they do, ask them, can they be at least a referral to you? They'll say, well, I don't know you too well. You say, well, all you have to say is you got a phone call from me and I sounded like a good guy, and send my resume to HR. That's all I have to say. Anybody can do that, and you might get a finder's fee. Some companies pay $300, $400, $500, or $1,000 for finder's fee. Now, when you do that, what happens is inside the HR department, now it comes from an internal employee, goes into one pile, and for that job, and they posted ad has 200 people. This job, this pile over here has 10 people. Your odds just went up to 1 out of 10 versus 1 out of 200. So that's another way to work around the system. And that's all about networking. So ageism, is it real or is it in your head? I choose to believe it's more in my head than real. Is there people that will discriminate against older people? Yes. Are there people that discriminate against bald people, fat people, racial issues, sexual issues? Yes, there are. But if you target correctly to the right size company where you can bring value, where you can bring something in, that issue may go dramatically down. Then if you interview well and your resume looks good and you have you do a nice energetic approach, etc., all of a sudden those are things you can do to combat that and make yourself desirable. So it's not just the skills and background, it's your aspirations, it's your personal agenda, it's your ability to come in and be at low risk of turnover. That's the key elements that you have to work on for each situation. So let's take an accountable approach, something I learned a long time ago in sales. If someone doesn't buy from me or something doesn't happen, I first look at it, it's my fault. Did I do everything I could do to identify that person's needs and help them solve a problem? That's where I look for the problem. I don't look for it, well, they're just idiots or they're a jerk or whatever. I don't blame it on somebody else. I first look at me, and then I try to make sure that I'm doing the right things in my presentations, even today in coaching. 1 out of 3, 1 out of 5, depending on which month, but 1 out of 3 people may sign up to me. But I look at every call and I do everything I possibly can to understand if I can help that person. And then I give them a proposal, and then they have to figure out a way to afford it. I understand that problem and I respect that problem, but I have to do everything I can to make that happen. Likewise, in job search, you have to do everything you can to make them feel that you are a person they should hire. And the golden rule of sales is very simple. People will do what's in their own best interest as they perceive it. And if they perceive you as a solution that helps them achieve their goals, and 1 second. Rum and Coke. Okay. Without the rum. When I get off of this, I'll have a couple.
Cheers, Howard.
I would tell everybody, open your cocktails now. I'm about tired too. Okay. So let's go back to this. But the whole key is if it's in their interest to make their numbers and you do a good sales job, you will get these jobs. I can't tell you how many people I've coached and they've walked in and created jobs by being there, by getting in front of the right person and talking to them about what they could do. We had our bourbon guy, remember that one, Carrie? And he sent him into 3 companies. I had a school bus supervisor, went into Ryder Logistics, and she went in there and got a job. I give you this lady in Scotia Bank. I placed her 3 times. She comes back to me every time she needs a job. An executive lady, bilingual. She was in HR and doing project management, and the HR person said, you need to, over here in this insurance division of Scotia Bank, the non-banking division with other financial products, you need to go over there and interview for a job for senior regional director. She was bilingual, so she had South America. And she goes, great. So she calls me up because I had helped her husband. And I said, okay, here's what you do. You go out and talk to that lady who's take her out to coffee, and the lady that's leaving. And she does that. And I prepped her up for how to handle that call. And you tell her you're thinking about applying to this job. She's just thinking about it. And she had coffee with her, and she came back to me and she said, she was really tough. She told me, don't even bother applying. You don't have the background. You don't know the first thing about this. And you don't have a prayer. So she's a little upset. I said, no problem. Let's clean the resume up. We'll send the resume in. So we sent the resume in. The HR automatic responders came back, and it came back in 24 hours. You're not qualified for this position, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I said, well, now we got to go to your HR friend, executive, and tell them that we're having a little difficulty getting through the gates here. So she gets in and, oh, yeah, we'll get you an interview. So she gets put in place to interview. Well, the interview was with the VP of that company and the same lady that told her not to show up. Okay, a little awkward, right? So that's who she's interviewing, two of them together. Well, it ran her interview. She sold herself, told what she knew, went through it a whole bit. Nice structured interview. She beat out 4 people in that division and got that job. And that can happen. I have lots of stories like that. I know for a fact she came back for her second job. We did the same thing in Mexico, where she beat out the banking people to get a job in that division. So guess what? Once you turn out the fact that whether you're qualified or not, or you have everything or not, if you can out interview and show your value, they will hire you. And it has to do with she had a real good interview. So what we did here was we set up our goals. We defined the companies that we're going to approach. We get our resume forward looking like a piece of marketing collateral. We learn how to sell ourselves as a product. And then we set up 20, 30 companies that we're going to target. And we go after those companies and get to the decision makers, not necessarily HR people. They are order takers unless you're going into the HR department. Okay. And now once we get these two, we execute these meetings, and you will learn to create a position for yourself. Will it happen every time? Of course not. I can't get it to happen more than 1 out of 3, 1 out of 5 times. But so what? The point is, you only need one job to satisfy your problem and to get you back in a productive situation that you like and that you want to do, and you can make some money at it. And you have all the luxury in some cases of contract, consulting, perm, project, etc. So I hope that gives everybody a little more positive attitude about this issue, and hopefully some confidence that, yes, let's do everything I can do first. And then if someone is hell-bent on ageism, great. That's not a company you want to get into. Forget it. But now's the time to learn this technique. And I have one final comment here, Carrie, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I talked to my friend, that guy today, who's always ahead of the curve on recruiting and everything. And I was asking him what he was up to. And his comment to me was, we were talking a little bit into AI and whatever. And he gets all his jobs, doesn't even use a resume. He said, I'm not a college graduate. I have no experience in that. I'm just I'm a techie and I know how to do it. He gets his jobs all the time. High paying jobs, 200 grand a year, running recruiting processes and everything else. He's awesome. And Eric said to me, he said, what do you think of this AI coming in? What do you think about jobs? Are there going to be more jobs or less jobs coming out? And I said, going to be a lot fewer jobs. There's going to be a lot of layoffs. And he goes, me too. I said, I think there are going to be hundreds of thousands of layoffs in every department of a company as this AI comes out. And so therefore, you got to be better at pinpointing where you go, and the smaller and mid-sized companies are going to be a little less affected than the big companies. And they don't hire the most anyhow, big companies. Most of the hiring, if you look at the statistics from the Labor Department, are really mid-sized companies and low companies. So learn to find targets in the lower and mid-sized companies, and you will have a more secure situation where you can help them adjust to AI instead of being a victim of AI. It's my final tip going on, and that will happen sure as the market changed when computers came out. Just as sure as that. And I've seen that cycle. So thank you for your time and at tonight. And Carrie, do we have anything else to cover here?
Yes. Thank you, Howard. Really good insight. So, when we were preparing for this presentation, for this insider session, we talked about the Ronald Reagan quote, if anybody can remember when he was on the presidential debate, and he did exactly what Howard's talking about. He preempted that age thing and flipped it upside down by saying, I'm not going to, and I'll have the words wrong, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I won't use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him, kind of a thing, right? So he completely turned it upside down, and that's what we want you to do. So we do have going forward next steps. If anybody wants to continue the conversation, we are going to do a master class in the month of November, where we're going to do a 3-hour workshop where we give you some exercises and walk you through and teach you how to target the right companies, like Howard said. We're going to have some hand-on exercises to create that forward-looking resume, so it's not that chronological view of everything that you've done all these past years, but here's what you're capable of doing, and here's what you can bring to the table going forward. And then we're also going to discover and talk about some of the interview techniques to preempt and overcome those objections. So you can go ahead if you're interested and sign up for it now, and we'll confirm the date for you. It will happen in November. Or if you're looking for more direct one-on-one personalized career consultation, you can sign up for the free consultation session, and either Howard or I will work with you to get you on the right path going forward. I do want Howard, and I know we're almost at 8 o'clock, so I want to let everybody go, but there were a couple of really good questions that came in. I think you covered a lot of them, but how to answer an illegal question when it comes in. Any advice, Howard, from you on that?
Well, yeah, it depends on, they're going to ask them, but a lot of times when they ask an illegal question, it's because they haven't been taught the interview. It's usually from a manager or somebody who hasn't had all the HR education, et cetera, and he slips. They're curious to find out something about you. They're curious to know why you have these gaps. You got to have an answer for these gaps. You got to have an answer for your jumps. You got to have an answer for why you stayed too long at the same company. You got to have an answer if you started a business and now you want to get into a corporate cave, right? Sometimes. But the fact is, they're just asking questions to understand you, and what they're really meaning to do is build some trust and confidence. So I tend to answer them. I don't sit there and get my nose out of joint. I want the job, and I don't know if I'll take it yet, but at this point I'm in sales mode. So in sales mode, I'll answer it. Will it set me off a little bit? That's for later when I make a decision about whether I accept an offer. Right now, I want to get moved along till I get an offer, and then come back and deal with that later in the cycle. So don't get your ego in the way. The goal is to get through these interviews, go from possibility to probability to reality, reality being I have an offer. Now, if you have to clear something up, then you have a strategy to go in and really see what's going on there. You'd be surprised how personalities change, views change, et cetera, once they commit to you. So I would just answer the question in general, and try to be honest with it. I mean, there's a positive way to say it, but I wouldn't let it disrupt my flow on the front end. I would deal with it on the back end.
Right. Thank you. And I think the other questions that came in, Howard, you've covered within the presentation, but I do want to open it up. Are there any other questions anybody wants to ask before we wrap up here?
Yeah, it's Mark.
Hey, Mark.
I would like to ask, rather than how do you identify middle-sized and small-sized companies? That's a big challenge. I mean, you could go online, but is there a way to do that?
Yeah, we happen to have we have an AI product, Seamless AI, which will allow us to look for companies in Atlanta by industries, by executives, by size, from employee size and business size, et cetera. So there are ways to do that. So you have to get to somebody's list, et cetera. Most of the lists never have the details of the executives and the managers that you have to get to. But we do have that capability, actually. And I've always known that's the key to networking, if you can get to those managers. Otherwise, it becomes a little difficult using LinkedIn because you might get to a name, but they don't put their contact information out there. And unless you're first connected to them, you can't see it, except if you have an expensive recruiter package. So the answer is to
Totally
get
true.
somebody has a list.
It's true, Howard, because everything is done on the algorithm method, and I agree with everything that you've said and what Curry said during the conversation tonight. But I don't want to work for a big company at this stage of the game. Why would I? I don't want to do that. But I know I have value to a smaller, or a mid-sized or smaller company, and the ageism thing is nonsense because they need experience.
That's right.
Do.
That's right.
And
I failed miserably when I went back to a $1 billion company late in my career, and it was too bureaucratic for me. I'm more of an entrepreneurial startup up guy, and I went back there and they drove me crazy by doing PowerPoints like this thing. I had to do them every night for meetings, just to be in meetings and stuff. And it turned out, it was the politics and everything else. And I needed to fire somebody, and they wouldn't let me do it. And so anyhow, I retrained their sales force to exactly the opposite approach that they had taught this sales force in the accounting and finance area. And they had a thing where they were selling at the time workforce management, where you did projects where you took over departments like the administration department or other things, outsourcing, you call it, right? It's real simple.
Right.
And they were just getting used to that, and they were trying to teach these people how to sell it. And I ended up going and auditing the thing, and in the end, they couldn't figure this out. They kind of laughed at me because I was just a recruiter and they were from other industries and they were all proud of this and everything, but they didn't understand domain. They didn't understand how the thing worked, right? They couldn't figure out the details. They were trying to sell software and all this other stuff. So I took over a team one night when had to do a presentation for the Friday review, and we had all this gobbledygook language they used. I took over the presentation because we weren't getting anywhere. In the end, we did a presentation next day. The first presentation failed miserably, and they were critiqued by the executives. The second one, the one I was led, we came up there and we led it all through, and we ran through it. It was very structured, very poignant, solving problem after problem after problem. And we used all the same techniques that I've been taught. And at the end, I said, "Well, do we have any questions here?" And the executives looked at us and said, "No, we don't have any questions." This was actually a real sale to UPS, and I hit it right on the nose. And they said, "We'd like you to do that presentation again, and we're going to videotape it." And that became the model for that $1 billion company on how to sell their products. And I was in the company 3 weeks. And they couldn't figure it out. Why? They didn't have domain expertise. They couldn't get to it. The same thing happened when I sold an AI applicant tracking system. I've always sold solutions that weren't out there, things that are new, right? So I went out in 1992, the guy in front of me, the guy had been there a year and a half, couldn't sell the product because it was expensive. It had a proprietary database. It was 5 times more expensive than the other systems, and nobody wanted to buy it. I said, "Well, I don't know. I like it." They had sold 5 in the country, I think. And I said, "I kind of like this product." And it was a company from the West Coast. So I said, "All right, I'll take the job." I took the job. In the next 4 years, I sold 34 of them. Why? Because I targeted the big companies. I went to the right HR departments.
Right.
The first year, I sold them on the concept of this is a human asset management system. I made it a bigger solution so they could justify it with the internal hires and internal promotions and all the rest of it, and et cetera. I sold Disney, MCI, et cetera. So how did I win? And I figured out where was the target for that product, and how do I present and sell to that marketplace, and et cetera. I did free demos, educational things just to get them warmed up. Then because HR never has enough budget. So then the next year they had budget, and I raked in all those systems. And the person who succeeded me afterwards said she didn't have to do any cold call, and everybody in the place knew who I was. And the fact of the matter is, you get out there and you get to the target market that will like you. And then that's how you win.
I think another thought, Mark, on that is targeting the big companies, right? So whether it's Coca-Cola or Walmart or UPS or whatever, and then looking at their partners, right, in their industries, right? Because they might be a smaller company where you can get into, but going back to Howard's point, you have the domain knowledge for whatever industry that is.
Right.
I'm sure
Well-
some library, even the libraries at this point, have access to some kind of company database. You can go by SIC code or different things like that and go look for all the companies in those SIC codes, and you can put some other criteria in, and you get a prospect list. And then once you get the prospect list, they say, all right, now I got to figure out how do I search a little further and get the contacts in there that are the key decision makers. And the key decision makers aren't sitting in HR. They're order
Well-
takers.
Well, I think that everyone on the call would agree that LinkedIn, while I don't agree with it, it is a prospecting tool that people use, and it's very lazy prospecting. But if you're not on it, you're not helping yourself. But the key is to get into situations where you can identify yourself, and fight the ageism issue, because we all fight that. You can submit your resume to an algorithm. It's going to shoot things back, and they have creative ways of figuring out what your age is, and they're automatically not interested in you. Bottom line is, I know, Howard, I know you tell me that I talk too much, but there's not a lot of people I'm out there in the sales realm that I know I couldn't compete with. It really doesn't matter what age I am.
That's correct. I know you well enough, and I told you that. How many jobs did you get from LinkedIn? How many people called you from LinkedIn where you got into any serious discussions?
None.
Okay, thank you very much. Next. That's exact. I get 100 people a day that are putting things on my thing, trying to give me coaching help. I don't need coaching help. I need leads if I can get them. I follow up with them. But guess what? I ignore them. It's an overused, it's self-destructing right now. They don't care about people getting jobs. They care about selling the ads and the postings to companies. That's what they care about. They don't care whether you win. So second of all, you're not in the prime market for some of the jobs that they're looking for, where they're looking for mass jobs. Figure out where you can go out and compete and go to places where they're not. When I started selling, even in Atlanta, on that other thing, Atlanta, it was loaded with competitors selling software in Atlanta in the applicant tracking. Every vendor had a rep in Atlanta. So where did I go? I went to Tennessee. I went to Alabama. I went to Florida. I went to places where they weren't. And while they're sitting there fighting over a couple eggs in Atlanta, I'm down there planting, picking up eggs all over the place.
There you go. Yeah.
Go where they ain't.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Well, yeah, thank you, Howard. Thank you, Mark, for the questions, and everybody for being here and submitting the questions. Give me a day or so and I'll get the recording out. And if anybody wants the PowerPoint, happy to get it to you. And like I said, just let us know how we can help you. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for everything. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.